Welcome, everybody. I'm Susan, and I'm one of the moderators for the 2020 Quarantine Book Club. And this is my first time doing this alone. Pamela Scholzvik is the one that brainstormed and came up with the idea for the book club, and she has family issues, and so it's just me tonight. But she may pop in here later, we heard. There's going to be a drawing at the very end, and she may pop in and do that. If not, we'll do that later. But thanks everyone for joining us, and thanks for being patient with our technical difficulties. First of all, I'd like to start by saying thank you to Amy and Nancy Harrington. They are the ones that make this all possible for us to have this forum. And they are the hosts tonight, and they are two sisters who founded the Passionistas Project to inspire women to follow their passions. The project features a podcast, live events on their Facebook group, upcoming monthly women's equality events, and they have a quarterly subscription box filled with products from women-owned businesses and female artisans. They're currently taking orders for the fall box. Their theme this quarter is Passionistas Persist. They hope the items in the box will inspire you to stand in your power, roar at the top of your lungs, take care of yourself, and remember to laugh, because without joy, what's it all for? If we all support one another and stay persistent, great things will happen. You can find out how to subscribe to the box and more about the Passionistas at thepassionistasproject.com. So thanks, Nancy and Amy. And we are here tonight with Tracey Enerson Wood, who wrote our book for September, and it is The Engineer's Wife, and a lot of you read it, and I read it, and it's one of my favorites. So welcome, Tracey. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Okay. Tracey's bio, I'm going to read that, and then we'll start with the questions. She has always had a writing bug. While working as a registered nurse, starting her own interior design company, raising two children, and bouncing around the world as a military wife, she indulged in her passion as a playwright, screenwriter, and novelist. She has authored magazine columns and other nonfiction, written, and directed plays of all lengths, including Grits, Fleas and Carrots, Rocks and Other Hard Places, Alone, and Fog. Her screenplays include Strike 3 and Roebling's Bridge. Other passions include food and cooking and honoring military heroes. Her co-authored anthology cookbook, Homefront Cooking, American Veterans Share Recipes, Wit, and Wisdom, was released by Skyhorse Publishing in May of 2018, and all authors' profits are donated to organizations that support veterans. Her debut novel, The Engineer's Wife, a historical fiction about the woman who built the Brooklyn Bridge, was released by Source Books in April of 2020. A New Jersey native, she now lives with her family in Florida. So, thank you so much, Tracey, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I can't believe I did all that. I must be old.
That's a pretty big resume. That's and diverse, like very diverse. So let's talk first about what we were talking about a little bit earlier about the process for this book. And I know a little bit, but when did you start writing the book? And tell us about your journey with writing the book.
Okay. Well, it's been a long journey, and I actually started this story as a play, and I was at the time writing plays of all lengths, mostly short plays, but I got this idea, basically a concept of a story I wanted to write and put up there on the stage. And the basic concept was really pretty simple. I wanted to follow a family through generations that had an occupation that was actually very dangerous. because I wanted to explore the family dynamics of what happens when, dad sends the son off to work and he gets killed or hurt or something like that. Or, just even thinking about it, and this stemmed from being myself in a multi-generational military family where my son was at war in Afghanistan and Iraq, doing work with bombs, and my husband was active duty, had been for many years, and my son-in-law was active duty Navy. So I was sort of surrounded by this, and it was sort of a family tradition. And so that's sort of where I got the idea. And so I wanted to write this play. And I grew up in northern New Jersey, and New York City was always sort of Oz to us. It was the great Oz. That's where we went for grand adventures. And I always loved the pictures of the men building the skyscrapers back mostly during the 30s and 40s. And they're sitting up there like, 100 stories off the ground, and they're just kind of sitting on a girder eating their lunch, and I was always sort of fascinated by that. Like, have they no fear? And what, isn't that amazing? I said, if I could find a family that did that, and I could have the father walk out on the girder and, give the ham sandwich, which is why that's in the epilogue, by the way, to the son, and then, go home and talk about it. And I just, that's sort of where I went from. And so I started researching, trying to find like a New York family that was, architects, or at least doing something dangerous, building something in New York City. And I didn't find the family. I didn't find the architects. It just, if it existed, it wasn't written down. But then I found out about the Roeblings and how John Roebling immigrated from Germany in order to build his dreams, because the Kaiser wouldn't allow him to build the things that he knew he could. So he immigrated to the US to build things, and built several bridges actually before, of course, the Brooklyn Bridge. But then he tragically was killed before the bridge really even got underway in construction. And he, as in the story, he handed it down to his son Washington, who was just fresh out of the Civil War. And I started thinking, what he went through, and I knew he was at Gettysburg, and I knew that he had a fairly famous brother-in-law that he worked with. And I thought, oh, there's so much fun to play with there, And then I found about Emily, how, history has basically forgotten her. The last 5 years, I've seen a little bit more about her appearing, but this was 10 years ago. And I'd never heard of her, and I'd been over the bridge many, many times. And here she is, this amazing, amazing woman. That bridge would not be there. New York City would not be what it is now if it hadn't been brought together by that bridge in that time. So when I discovered her and just saw her spunk and saw how she pulled it together, and then all the other fun things to work with, I knew I had to write this story. So I started writing the play, and failed miserably because it's a heck of a lot of story to get in a play. And so then after that, I took a couple years to learn screenwriting, and I wrote a screenplay. And I think it was pretty good. I sent it out to Hollywood and stuff, and they loved it. But they really felt that it needed to be a novel first. Let's get that story out there. And when the people demand the movie, then we'll make it. So
Okay.
that's how I went on and started writing the novel, which, was another several year time frame just to learn how to write a novel. I mean, I knew how to write. I'd written fiction, nonfiction, but novel writing is its own universe, is the best way I can explain it. So that's what I did. And I wrote short stories and other things kind of in between, and to take breaks. But that's basically why I wrote the story.
Okay. Well, so it took you about 10 years? Am I doing the right math?
10 years from inception, from the very first inkling of a story to it being published this year.
Okay. I wasn't sure if my math was right. Okay. How long did it take you to get an agent for the book? Or how did you get your agent? What was that process like?
The best things I did, for anybody who's in that process right now, is I joined Query Tracker and learned a lot about the process from that. And that's a group of basically authors who are trying to find agents, and they're documenting, what the agents are saying. And there's a list where you can track, what agents are taking, what genres and that type of thing. And I spent probably a year and a half reading what other people are doing, reading about how to query, how to write a query, then sending my query through multiple people to make it the best it can be, because you generally get one chance. So I would say it probably took me about a year and a half. But actually, when I did get the offer, I had an offer from 2 different agents. Actually, neither one of them had I queried directly, because that's a lot of times how it happened. One of them, actually, I've had 2 agents on this book. My first agent I got through the Women Fiction Writers Association. They had like a pitch thing, and I pitched my story on that, and she found it and said, send it to me. That's how I signed with her. Did wind up, she left the business and had to go through the process again. But lucky for me, I actually had two agents, because I also write nonfiction, and I had a fiction for had an agent for nonfiction, and she was able to just sort of slip in there, because she had read it too and always wanted it too. But that's another long story, but basically it took about a year and a half. It's never a straight road. It just never is. So my advice is enjoy the journey. You'll learn a lot. You'll talk to lots of people. You get lots of advice, some good, some maybe there's only a little piece of it good, but when you get some advice, listen to it.
Okay, well, and the last one that's the stock question that we have is, what did you have planned for your book launch? Obviously.
Oh,
so
yeah.
we know you didn't get to do that.
Yeah, I didn't get to do it. I had several museums. I had the Roebling Museum in Trenton, New Jersey. I had the Putnam County Museum in Cold Spring, New York. I had one other somewhere, I can't remember. I had, I think, there's a restaurant in it's called Bo's Kitchen and Restaurant in Manhattan, close to the bridge, who I had actually met one of the owners at a writers conference. I mean, very, very early on in it. And we just sort of jokingly said, hey, when you have your book and it's published, come and you can be in our, and then it happened. And so they invited me. So I was going to do that with Ann Hood and David Ebershoff, and some really amazing best-selling authors were going to be that night too. So I had that. My sister and brother-in-law own a winery and have wine tastings and things in Warwick, New York. It's called Clearview Winery. So I was going to do a signing and a talk there. And then several bookstores, maybe 5 or 6 in South Carolina. For some reason, I had a bunch there. Several in Georgia. Oh, the biggest heartbreaker was I was invited to the Atlanta Historical is it museum or society? Anyway, it's at Margaret Mitchell's house in Atlanta. The author of, did I say that right? Author of Gone with the Wind. And her home is now a museum, and they have readings and so forth, literary things. And I was invited to go there. And so that was heart-wrenching. It was always my favorite book.
Yeah,
so that's the type of things. And several bookstores here and there, mostly independent bookstores.
Okay, well, that may be the most disappointing quarantine bummer that we've had so far. You're going to go to the mansion. Okay, we're going to
start. But I get to Zoom with so many people.
And well, that is,
I wish everybody just turn on their cameras, because I would like to see people.
And who do we have here? We have Mary. I feel like Miss Vicky, always on Romper Room. Ours was Miss Vicky anyway. So we do have questions starting here.
There's some faces. Good.
Yay. Okay, there they are. Now, I'm going to do mine first, because I was really fascinated by this one, and you have an interior design background. So I wondered, what is it true about the stones? Did she go and personally choose the stones to go in the places that they ended up on the bridge? And then
She in one of the letters, I think it was a letter back home, she briefly mentioned that the stones were coming in lots, and sometimes, you know, they were coming from, I think a lot of them came from like Maine, in upstate New York too, I believe. There was like 17
Okay.
different quarries they actually came from, not just one. And in one letter she briefly mentioned that, oh, we got, you know, they're all this color, and we can't just have them, you know, thrown in there all together or it will look terrible. We need to but she doesn't say how that was done. She didn't say that she went out to there and picked them. She just said, you know, she didn't note
Okay.
that it was a problem.
That just fascinated me. So that was, that's one of my favorite parts of the bridge. I love to look at the
Yeah,
variation in the stone. So it's beautiful. Okay.
it is beautiful.
Um, you got to see some of the questions that were posted in the group. Um, and a couple of them, I'll hit those first and then we'll go to the chat if we have. Well, let me do the chat first because you've seen all those. So um, Mary wants to know, could you tell us a little bit about, oh, let me do that one later. Which character was your favorite to write? This is from Amanda. I'll do yours later, Mary. So which character was your favorite to write?
Oh, Emily yeah, Emily. I was so into her mind and character. My poor husband would come home from work and I wouldn't have seen him for, you know, 12, 14 hours, whatever. And it would, you know how actors say, I'm in, you know, I'm in the zone. I'd be so in Emily's head in 1870 or 1875 or whatever. I mean, it literally would take me a few minutes to sort of get out of there and be back in Virginia or wherever the heck we were living at the moment.
Yeah,
So yeah,
that's,
Emily. And second, I would say was P.T. Barnum
yeah.
and Wash. I don't know, but probably P.T. Barnum. He's a lot of fun to write because I
It,
could just be outrageous, which I knew, you know, Wash wouldn't really be too outrageous, although he was known to have a fairly spicy sense of humor. But I loved being able to just sort of play with PT.
yeah, he was, so did Emily. So,
Yes.
um, and here's the question from Rachel. What made you choose the story of the relationship with PT?
There was actually several things. They were like these red flags I found when I was doing research. And the first and probably most important thing was it's very well documented that John and Wash went on a full year tour showing the bridges to a group of men who were benefactors who had lots of money, and they had identified men, pretty much all men. There was one other woman who went on the tour, but it's not real clear why. But they went to the richest men, basically first in New York, of course. They went to all the, you know, then millionaires, which would now be what we would consider a billionaire for sure, to be equivalent. And they went to the people who had the most interest in the bridge, who would be supportive. And so there's a core group of 12 to 15 men that they went to. And, you know, very early in my research, I found that, well, you know, P.T. Barnum was living in Manhattan, was starting his business at the time, and was one of probably the top 5, maybe even, you know, depending on what year, richest men in New York City. And it was very well known also that he was expanding. He wanted to bring this city together. He, you know, that was his sort of captive audience, and he was pretty vocal about, you know, plans for expanding both the circus and the city. So, but there's absolutely nothing about him when they're talking about the men, and they're pretty well named. You know, this guy is on the tour, and this guy was not a good guy, but he was included because, you know, and how Boss Tweed was involved. So I just like, well, that's funny. I mean, he was there. He, you know, he was a loudmouth too. I mean, why was he not even asked? He had to have been. They had to have gone to him. So why did it not make the papers? Why is it not written in history? So that was one thing. Another thing was that after, just like in the book, his museum burnt down, which happened actually several times, he moved his menagerie to Brooklyn, very close to where the Roeblings live, at the same time that Wash was living in New Jersey. So like, that's interesting. There was, when the bridge opened, As in the book, there was a big parade, right, with elephants and, well, I don't want to do spoilers if you haven't read it, but anyway, there's a big parade to celebrate the opening of the bridge, which PT offered to do. He went to the mayors of both cities and said, I want to put on a big parade, and I'm going to pay for everything, and I'm gonna have all the elephants and stuff. I just, I'll be promoting, of course, myself, but it's going to be a big thing for the bridge, and we'll get millions of people there. And they turned him down. They wouldn't let him do it. Now, I fudged a little bit and moved it up to that point, which for dramatic reasons, basically. But it wasn't until a year later, when they were still having problems with scandals and worries about the safety of the bridge, that they went back and told PT he could do it. So it's like, okay, why was he kept away from the bridge? Why were things kept secret? Why was he living very close to Roebling's, yet somehow there's never any connection? So I just started to think, I think there's a connection there. Walks like a duck, smells like a duck.
Yeah.
I think there's something
It is
there.
an affair.
Yeah, and I thought, what reason would they have for keeping it quiet? I mean, to this day, why? I mean, why? It doesn't make any sense. Why? And I thought, an affair, an emotional affair, or something that was,
Yeah.
during those times, you can't have, women didn't even go out unescorted. They had to go out with men. So I thought there was probably some kind of scandal they were keeping hidden. And just as in the book, I also found out that the yellow journalism of the time, made most of their money by payoffs. I don't know about most, that I shouldn't say that, but they made a lot of their income by people paying them to not print stories. So I thought, and this was a family of means that could very well have done it. And they were very concerned about their reputation. That was, especially John and Wash, their family reputation was everything to them. And so that's also in the book too, that they, wouldn't even push their own wire because they were afraid of their reputation. So I don't know, I kind of put all that together. He's such an interesting character. He was unmarried for that period of time. And then afterwards, after the bridge was completed and the Roeblings went off to Trenton, P.T. Barnum married a woman even younger than Emily. People say, oh, he was too old for her. We're like, really? He married a woman even younger than Emily shortly after she left. So I don't know. I put it together. and
It's your book. You get to do what you want.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've had a lot of questions about the caisson disease.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was, well, I'll just do Esther put one here. Did Emily really figure out why the men were experiencing the disease and help them to know how to avoid it? And I'll let you talk about that. We've had several.
I didn't find evidence that she actually totally figured it out. I know she was very concerned about it. I know she was documenting, and she was speaking with Dr. Smith, the site doctor at the time. And he was working on a machine that would have been above ground now, what we would know now is a decompression chamber. He actually was working at it at the time. And there's drawings of it and everything. But the second caisson was done before they could get all the approvals done, so it was never used there at that site. And at that time, they still didn't really know what was causing it. It was just basically observational that, who is getting sick and why. And I have to think that Emily had to have been a part of it. It wasn't written down. That's why you have to have historical fiction, because you have to, extrapolate sometimes, because a lot of things, especially what things women did, were not written down. They just, they wouldn't get credit. And I don't think she would have taken credit. So yes and no.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see. What's the other one? Oh, okay. Did Connecticut residents really want to encourage the building of the bridge so the immigrants wouldn't end up in their community? That was an interesting point in the book, I thought.
I'm afraid I can't remember. I don't
Oh,
remember if I think there was some things a little, a lot of times you take like a tiny little something you're reading and it kind of gets bigger. So I
okay.
think that was one of those things that I read like in Harper's Bazaar or something, some comment of like, oh, we don't want them coming here. But it was not something, as far as I recall, that P.T. Barnum said. But I put the words, I think that's what it is. It did, someone said it, not P.T. Barnum, but I put it in his mouth because
Okay.
why not?
Um, let's see. What, who else is on here that has a question? A lot of people loved your book. Okay,
Good.
um, I think, I don't know if Mary's finished. So what happened to Emily after the bridge was completed?
Okay. So they stayed on for, I don't think it was even quite a year. They started building a mansion in Trenton, which Emily, that was basically what she did for the next year. After that, she was designing uh, the mansion in Trenton. And then they moved to Trenton, and then she joined like every women's group you can imagine, Optimists and what's the one that starts with a Z. She did went around doing speeches and that type of thing. She spoke at several colleges. She did go back to school and earned a law certificate, which because women were still not allowed to study for the bar to get a law degree, but she was able to get the highest that they would allow a woman at the time, which is a law certificate, and did quite a bit of writing. She wrote some fairly well-known articles about the women's movement, and was fairly influential with that. But and was a society woman. They had a lot of parties apparently at the Trenton Mansion when that was built. Wash didn't really, as in the book, was not his thing, but she liked to entertain, and they had a lot of people through the big home in Trenton, which unfortunately doesn't survive. It was torn down.
Oh, okay.
One thing that
Um,
did survive was the stained glass window, though. Some artists made I mean, like a big room size stained glass of the Brooklyn Bridge, and they did save that out of the house, and it's in some museum somewhere.
oh, interesting. I didn't know that. That's,
I need to
let's
go
see.
see it someday. I can't remember where exactly it is, but
Um, okay, let me go back to some questions over here. And y'all had so many good ones on the group page. Oh, Dana asked about how many trips you made to the Brooklyn Bridge, and
yeah.
talk a little bit about how you lived near there, or did you live near there? Well,
Well, I grew up in northern New Jersey, about an hour and some change from New York City. Didn't get there a whole lot, maybe 4 or 5 times a year. Uh, so I don't know, I guess my lifetime, I probably made 20, 30 trips or so to New York. But I actually only during the research phase, only got to go to the bridge just one time. We were, for part of the time, was I in Alaska? Yeah, I was living in Alaska when I started the story, I think. And then Virginia, and then Germany, and all kinds of places. So I actually got there once, but it was great. I walked back and forth the full length of it, I think 4 times, and just touched it and saw the plaque with all 3 names, and just looked in wonderment at the cables, now knowing what they were built of and how they were built, strand by strand, thousands of time back and forth. It was just so much more meaningful to me that time than any other time I had crossed it.
I think a lot of people were surprised the time period when it was built. If you didn't grow up there or know the history of the Brooklyn Bridge, you didn't know that it was built that long ago. A lot of people thought it was built in the 20s and
Yeah,
30s,
yeah, no
and
electricity.
it was that was an eye opener for me. I've been to the Brooklyn Bridge, but only once, and I didn't realize it was that old. Um, oh, this was a question that was funny, and I missed this in the book. This is totally off topic, but jumping back to one of Marilyn's questions, did you have proof that Emily really did break a boy's arm in her teen years? Was she tomboy? What was that?
She was a tomboy. That much is, pretty much in evidence. She was very strong. She had a whole bunch of brothers. She was actually very close to GK. Um, and there was some sort of an accident. I don't think it was a broken arm. I actually forget exactly what it was, but she was just kind of known for that, for being rough and tumble and hanging out with the boys.
Okay, yeah, she did that. All right, let me see. Okay, here we go. Let's go back to Mary's question. She said, could you tell us a little bit about your new book and when we can expect to see it in bookstores?
Okay, that's a great question. I always love that question.
Yeah, that's throw you
my
one.
my next book title is The War Nurse. Keep your eyes peeled for a cover reveal very soon. And The War Nurse is the story of another American heroine who we all should know about. And her name is Julia Stimson, and she was a World War I era nurse. But she didn't actually, she wasn't a war nurse. She wasn't an army nurse. She was just a director of nursing, basically, a boss nurse. She was running a school for nursing out in St. Louis, Missouri. And at the time, so this was in the 1913, 1914, 1915 time frame, the American Red Cross went to the big medical centers, so they didn't really call them that then, in the country, the best ones, the ones that were, just front runners in every way, what we would call now centers of excellence. So the American Red Cross went to several of these, 12 to 20, and depending on the year you're talking about, and asked them if they would train up to be a unit in case there was some sort of emergency or disaster or something, that they're being basically appointed as this base for the American Red Cross. And so the Washington University in St. Louis said, yeah, sure. They were honored, and they sort of started meeting every month. It was kind of an old boys club, and they smoked cigars and, played pool. And it was just kind of a joke, really. I mean, they didn't take it too seriously. They put a few supplies in the basement and, hey, we're a Red Cross center. So 1914, of course, Great Britain enters World War I, and we don't get into it until 1917. And so in 1917, when the U.S. was entering the war, the president asked the British, what do you need? What can we help with first? Now, mind you, they'd been fighting the war already for 3 years plus. And what they said is, we desperately, desperately need doctors and nurses. We have sent them to the front now because we are so short of men, and now we don't have enough to take care of the wounded, and our base hospitals are just running on empty. So we need doctors and nurses. Now, mind you, our soldiers weren't ready to go. That would take months of recruiting and training, and we weren't up to speed at all to fight a war as far as our troops are concerned. But the Red Cross went out to their base hospitals and said, okay, you remember back when, you decided you wanted to help out? When can you be ready to go? So the answer was from Washington University, amongst others, is, yep, we'll go, and we'll be there in 6 weeks. So Julia Stimson, my heroine, was the director of nurses at this university hospital, and they basically, told her, you have 6 weeks to get 65 nurses together and send over to the front. So with no training at all, that's what she did. She recruited them, she trained them, she went over to France. They replaced a British unit, base hospital number 21 in, 12 in Rouen, France, which is up in Normandy. And she stayed there for a year before she went on, moved up in the world to Paris and became head of all nurses in the theater, and then went on to head the Army Nurses Corps and American Nurses Association. So did great things, a a real trailblazer in nursing. Of course, I was a nurse for 25 years, so it was a story very dear to my heart. And of course, there's a little romance in there too, because I can't seem to write a novel without
Oh,
some
you
romance
definitely
in
got
there.
some romance in the.
I gotta have it in there. I mean, my novels aren't romances, but I call them historical fiction with romantic
There
elements.
was some romance. Yeah, there was some steamy
Yeah,
romance in there.
sort of,
Yeah.
you got it.
Okay.
It's part of life. I mean, if you didn't have that in there, it would,
Yeah, you wouldn't have one. So
it wouldn't have it. So anyway, so the
speaking of,
Warners will be, should be released about a year after The Engineer's Wife, which makes it April of 21, if everything goes according to plan. And again, we should have a cover reveal and pre-buy links very soon. That way you can order it and then forget about it, and it comes when it comes, and you don't have to pay for it till it comes out.
okay,
I love that.
great. I'm looking forward to it. I love the style personally, and I think a lot of our members did. Okay, two questions that we kind of talked about, and I just heard that Pam is here. Um,
There she is. Hi,
if this
Pam.
gets made into a movie, okay, if not, or when it's made in, not if.
When, yes.
Who would play Emily? Tell everybody who would play Emily, and PT and Wash. Who would be the main characters? Who do you see?
Okay. Well, for Emily, I would pick Anne Hathaway because I just think she's just so fabulous, and she's the right age, and she also lived in Brooklyn, and I just hear her voice many times when I'm writing or reading the book. So I would say Anne Hathaway for Emily. I would say Robert Downey Jr. for P.T. Barnum. Just because I just think he could really pull off the humor of it, and we won't be thinking of Hugh Jackman, I think,
Yeah.
if he is. And I can see the face of the guy I want for Wash, but right now his name is escaping me. He's got really beautiful, beautiful blue eyes, dark hair. Oh, what the heck is his name? I can't think of his name. He's not in a
That's
whole
okay.
lot of things. I don't know, it'll probably come to me about 2 a.m, but I want like a really kind of because Wash was if you've seen pictures of him, he's a very handsome man. And
And
what the
yeah.
heck is his name? Can't think of it.
Oh, well, if you think of it, you
It'll
can
come
pop
to
it in
me.
later. So let's talk a second. We always talk about the cover. Did you have input on your cover? And you have Emily walking across the bridge. So talk a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm. I didn't have a lot of it. I got veto power. I mean, you can come right out and say, no, I hate it, not do that. I got to, put some comments in for little things, but the whole structure of the thing, actually wasn't what I had in my mind at all. I had a silhouette of an elephant crossing the silhouette of the bridge. Very simple, stark, with just maybe the circus colors on the elephant. That's what I had suggested. But when this came, I'm like, it just blew me away. I absolutely loved it. The one thing I absolutely said has to be on it was of course the bridge in some way had to be there.
Yeah.
For one thing, I had bridge in my original title, and when the title got changed, there's no bridge in it at all. So he said, we have to have clearly the book, and they did do that. So I was very happy with that. The one thing I asked for, and I'm not sure I was ever still quite happy with it, and it was, it's really, really nitpicking. But if you look closely at the cover, I've actually got it right here. You can see up here very faintly the architectural drawings. And and when I first saw it, I said, oh, it looks like it's smudged, because they're very, very faint. And especially over right here, you can see the stonework. And then, of course, the end papers have it much more clearly. But I had asked for them to bring that out a little bit. And there's only so much you can do before you start detracting from the rest of it, which, the colors and everything just blew me away. My agent asked him to move a novel because that was like down here or something. But other than that, no, I'm like, can you bring that out a little bit? And I actually did ask him to adjust her dress a little bit, because this particular style, it would have been popular closer to 1900. And so I felt it was a little too modern. But then what we talked about is this is actually her coming back. And I'm thinking it's probably like when she came back for the last time, somewhere around 1901. It's actually perfect for that time frame. She
Oh,
died in
okay.
1902. So,
Oh,
great question. I love the cover.
Pamela said that's the Skarsgård actor from Big Lies. Matt Bomer, Dylan McDermott. These are the names for your
No.
wash. Patrick Dempsey. Okay. We are
Rob Lowe. I think that's it. I
Rob.
think it's Rob.
Oh,
I think.
Rob Lowe.
What does he look like? That name just came into my head. Is he like very dark hair, very blue eyes,
He was on West Wing.
45-ish?
I don't know. I don't know. I think he's older than that.
I think it's Rob Lowe.
Okay. All right. Pamela is here. Pamela, are you unmuted? I don't know if Pamela's not unmuted. I wanted to say a special
I'm unmuted now.
welcome. I was going to say a special welcome to or hello and shout out to Aura, and I know I hope she's watching us. And don't know, but she's one of our members, and we're thinking about her. And do you have the drawing for tonight?
I do.
Yay. Okay, so this is for, we have two. We're going to draw two names.
Yep.
We have two people. Okay.
Wait,
Okay.
before you do that, can I just say thank you to everybody, to Pamela and Susan and Amy and the other Amy and Nancy and to all of you readers. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing this. It's really so special. It's you keep an author going. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And for putting the group together in the first place.
It's Pamela. It was all Pamela's idea, and it was a good one.
Absolutely.
And here we are, so many months later. It's wild.
Yeah, it's
October 1st. Oh my gosh. All right. Okay, our first winner is Dana Austin.
Yay, I think Dana's. Hey, Dana. She in here?
She was. I think she had to go.
Okay.
And then our second winner is Melissa Avalos.
Okay. Melissa, yay. So we'll get with you all, get the information. We'll trade that and get your books sent to you. So do we have any other announcements, Pamela?
Well, the November book, or no, our October book is Lainey Cameron's The Exit Strategy. And I can't remember the date that we're doing our live Q&A with Lainey, but it's on there. I've created the event.
November something, yeah.
Yeah, and then November is going to be my book.
Yeah, we're doing yours.
Yep.
And I've already read Exit Strategy. I'm ahead of the game this time, and that one was good. So we've had all good ones, had really good books. Okay. So Tracey, thank you very much. Thank you for writing the book. It was a great read. Look forward to your next one. And as always, Amy and Nancy, we thank you, and we want everybody to go to thepassionistasproject.com and check out all that they have there, empowering women, and keep reading and keep interacting with us on QBC Book Club. We love y'all and have a great night.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was so great seeing all of you. Good night.
Good night.